is king! Christ is king!
Let all that you do be done in love. A Christian, when they see their society collapsing around them, doesn't cower or run in fear. He doesn't stick his head in the sand and hope that it will all change and just go away and be all right. He doesn't throw up his hands and say all is lost.
I just want you to hear again what I said. Someone was arrested in this country for thinking.
What?
For thinking silently on the streets of England.
Wow.
That has happened in the UK, ladies and gentlemen. Just bring yourselves in. Don't give the guy energy by paying him attention. Okay? He feeds on your attention. If you ignore him, eventually he goes away. The reason why he behaves like this is because, as you saw, when I moved away, nobody wanted to listen to him. So he came over here again. So, ladies and gentlemen, this happened in London, in England. I don't know the exact space. Google the story. 6 police officers were sent to arrest a woman for praying silently in the streets of England. Ladies and gentlemen, this should concern you, because we have passed a red line in terms of our freedoms in English society. If we can arrest someone for praying silently in the streets, then what is to stop us creating a law that says if you think something or you are suspected of thinking something like homophobia, you could not be arrested for it? There is no way to prove what someone is doing inside their own mind. But what has happened in England is that we have passed a bad law that outlawed harassment outside of an abortion clinic. And harassment was defined as anything that distresses the woman going for an abortion. So simply standing there and praying silently has been defined as harassment. And someone has been arrested because of that. Ladies and gentlemen, if you do not fight for your freedoms, they will be eroded from you one by one. Let us be clear. The Conservative Party is no bastion of free speech. The Labour Party is no bastion of free speech. The Liberal Democrats are no bastion of free speech. The reality is they're all in cahoots in limiting what you can do with your freedoms. These parties do not deserve your support. On the contrary, they deserve your rejection. Christians must organize themselves. They must organize themselves to go and to fight for the freedom of every Christian. No one is going to defend us except ourselves. Nobody is on the side of the Christian except the Christian. And that is why, as Christians, we must get behind Christian political parties like the Christian People's Alliance, which is the only pro-life political party in the UK. All you trads and conservatives, stop kidding yourself. Jacob Rees-Mogg is not a conservative. He is not a traditionalist. Jacob Rees-Mogg is a liberal. True conservatives, true traditionalists oppose abortion and seek its end. They don't compromise with the pro-murder lobby and their industrial mills of murder. They don't compromise with genocide and Holocaust, which is what we're practicing in the West. Any questions, ladies and gentlemen? On the topic.
What's making Christians abandon their faith? Because it was a Christian country, now it's an atheist country.
Yep.
What do you think is making Christians?
Good question. So the question is, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going to project my voice anymore because I don't have a heckler. So I'm just going to speak at this volume, and if you can't hear me, just move in. So the question is, why is there an apostasy of the church in the West? The answer is because the traditional institutions of the church have been captured by a political cult that is not based upon the apostolic and prophetic teaching, but based upon an Epicurean religion of humanity that worships the self. And these bishops are pushing, and have been pushing for decades, a progressive liberal agenda that is anti-Christian. And it scandalizes countless weak Christians. It also means that there is not effective or sufficient Christian education in our churches to form a genuine Christian identity, one that builds up the body of Christ and builds in a Christian identity. What we need are Orthodox bishops who believe the Christian faith and are not frightened to stand up for it, and are not frightened to defend it, and are not frightened to push it and to present it as the answer to the progressive world. What the West is looking for is a muscular, strong Christian identity. Those churches that practice something that is approximate to that are the churches that are growing. Those churches that are not are the churches that are shrinking. Christians, learn the lessons. We need to be activists within the institution of the church to push out the heretical progressive bishops and to recapture the church for Christ. And you start by capturing the seminaries, the Bible colleges, and the institutions that are the gatekeeping institutions of the body of Christ. And then you filter out the heterodox, liberal, progressive, mumbo-jumbo, soy boy, limp-wristed, yellow-bellied, lily-livered Christians, and you cultivate the masculine, strong, paternal, patristic, ardent Christians who believe in the confession of the martyrs and the confession of the confessing church, and are willing to die and be persecuted and to go to prison and be fined for standing up for the truth and for forming souls in the Christian faith. Next question, ladies and gentlemen. How do you, let this lady ask a question because you've already asked one. Go on.
I'm not meaning to be judging, but isn't Christianity about not judging and about loving everybody? And whether someone's gay or straight or labor or anything else, wouldn't the heart of the Christian religion be about acceptance? So wouldn't sort of humbleness and love and acceptance, obviously there has to be boundaries and you have to be safe.
Okay, so let me address the question. I'm not going to try to repeat every single word directly, but the lady essentially asked, isn't the heart of Christianity about not judging people, being nice to everyone, and being inclusive with certain boundaries? Right, ladies and gentlemen, let's be clear. That's not Christianity. That is churchianity, and it's not even a churchianity that's based upon apostolic teaching. That's the churchianity of churches who have been governed by liberal priests and liberal bishops who wouldn't know what the Bible teaches if a Christian came up and showed them, as I actually have, when a priest called Muslims to come to his church to celebrate Muhammad's birthday. I went to his church, showed him that it's not in the Bible to do that, and he didn't even know. Why? Because people that teach that kind of soy boy, limp-wristed, lily-livered, spineless jellyfish, gooey Christianity don't know Christ's teachings. They've never read the Bible. They don't know what the apostles teach. Yes, Christ taught to love the sinner. But when the sinner came to him, as our great champion, the Reverend Calvin said, it is the sinner that went away changed. It isn't Christ that went away changed. Yes, we should love the sinner, whoever they are, whatever sin they've done, but we should hold up to them a life filled with truth and virtue, so that it is they that are transformed by their encounter with the covenant community of God, and not the church that is changed by its encounter with the sinner. The reality is, all these soy boy, limp-wristed, jellyfish, lily-livered, spineless bishops that teach a gooey, let's love everybody and be nice kind of Christianity, they are apostates. The reality is, Christ calls you to a better kind of humanity than to leave you dwelling in your sin. He calls you to a chastity if you are in sexual sin. He calls you to courage if you are a coward. He calls you to hope if you are in despair. He calls you to faith if you are visionless. He calls you to love if you are filled with fear. He calls you to wisdom if you are imprudent. This is the way of Christ. And I simply say, reject the churchianity as presented by the good lady, because that is not real Christianity. And I would invite you, sister, to pick up the Bible and learn what Jesus is actually teaching.
Right, so, any other questions?
He didn't have even shoes. These people, they were not even nothing.
Yeah, but let me address that.
So I'm not saying what you're saying, I agree with you about worrying about what others.
Sorry, what's your question, sister? Because I'm doing questions.
My observation is that you're insulting
Religion is rubbish.
and I guess I don't see that as being Christian, and I'm not thinking about it.
Okay. So the sister says that it's not Christian to insult people. So is she saying Christ wasn't following Christ when Christ said, you lawyers, you scribes, you whitewashed tombs, you dead men's bones? Was Christ insulting people when he called them a brood of vipers? It was a Latin insult, ladies and gentlemen, to call people vipers. Christ called people brood of vipers, whitewashed tombs, dead men's bones. He called them hypocrites. So I'm sorry, it simply is wrong to think that it's not Christian to insult bad teachers, because Jesus insulted bad teachers. And if you've got a problem with that, you've got a problem with Jesus, so go and take it up with the Gospels. Any other questions, ladies and gentlemen? Any other questions? Any others? Going once? Going twice? Go on, bro.
Are you familiar with the like lady went to Jesus for help,
Yep.
and he said something about
It is not good to feed the dogs the food of the children.
Yeah. So how do you, because you're a Christian, how do you?
Yep. So it's that famous passage of the Dawagandists that state that Jesus said to the Syrophoenician woman or the Canaanite woman that it is not good to feed the dogs the food of the children, to which the woman replied, yes, but even the dogs can eat the crumbs from the table. Let's be clear. There were two words in the Greek language for dogs at the time that Jesus said these words. By the way, this conversation happened in Greek. Jesus Christ was speaking Greek at this time, because the Syrophoenician woman would have only known Greek. She would not have known Aramaic. And the word in Greek that Christ uses is a diminutive word. Now, brother, I don't know if you know what a diminutive word is. We have them in Spanish. I'm a bilinguist. We also use them in English. Let me give you an example from English. A husband says to his wife in a romantic moment, kitten. He describes his wife as a kitten. Now, or pet. In the north of England, strangers will refer to one another as pet or petal or flower. These are diminutive terms, but they're not heard as insults. In Spanish, and he's a Spanish speaker, when you want to describe someone in an affectionate way, you diminutize the word, so you make it little. So say you want to speak to your wife, but you want to speak affectionately to her. Rather than saying chica, which means girl, you say chiquita, which means little girl. But it's not an insult. So when Christ calls the Syrophoenician woman, he says to her, little dog, which means like a family dog or a puppy. So that's why it's not an insult. And you can tell that there's an affectionate use of language here because of the woman's reply. Because Christ says it's not good to feed the puppies of the food of the sons, but the woman says, but even the puppies can eat their crumbs. So they're having a bit of banter. It's not an insult. That's just a Dawagandist lie. So that's how I would address that. And next question, ladies and gentlemen, about the Christian faith. And I just want to thank you all for ignoring the troll. Don't give him your energy.
Do you believe in Virgin Mary?
Ignore him. Don't give him energy. Any questions about Christianity, guys?